I'm Rick Epstein. I'm the Frenchtown's official historian, and I'm going to tell you about the Great Fire of 1878. It happened at a time when the town was almost entirely made out of wood. There had been a fire company, the Vigilant Fire Company, and they had a hand pumper, but they had gone out of business and the pumper had fallen into disrepair, and Frenchtown had no fire protection in 1878. The fire started in the barn belonging to Dr. Emmanuel Deemy. Dr. Deemy and his wife and two sons, they were adolescents. And that house, that was the residence of Dr. Emmanuel Deemy. He was a physician. He had a wife, Josephine, and two children. And that's where he lived and practiced medicine. Now, right behind his house was a combination ice house and woodshed, and that's where that garage is right there. Now, over here, that's where his stable was. The stable contained a horse, a cow, a couple of rabbits, and it was in a cluster of stables. There were two other stables, each containing a horse. And at 1:45 on June 29th, 1878, a fire broke out. Dr. Deemy saw the fire. He ran out in his nightshirt and he managed to rescue his cow. He didn't think much about the rabbits probably, and his horse was engulfed in flames. He could not rescue the horse. And the fire spread. It burned another stable containing a horse. The third horse was rescued. It was behind the bank, which was then on 2nd Street. And the banker, William Stover, ran out and rescued his horse. Meanwhile, the fire, it spread into the Hahn and Williams spoke factory. They made wagon wheels out of oak and hickory. So there was plenty of lumber there, plenty of fuel for the fire. There were finished wheels ready to go. The fire spread into there. It was the Hahn and Williams spoke factory. It was one of several spoke factories in town, but it was right next to the barn. So the fire spread there. There was no wind that night, so the fire went wherever it could find fuel. That burned up. Then the fire spread north, burned up the bank on 2nd Street. There was a house on the corner that burned up. The fire jumped Harrison, burned up a house on that corner. It spread south up Harrison, burning stables, a newspaper office and print shop for the Frenchtown Press, and then the American Temperance House Hotel on the corner. Okay, probably the biggest building that burned up in that fire was the American Temperance House Hotel. And that was right here on this corner, right where the bank drive up and the parking lot is now. That burned up. Across the way was a furniture store and undertaking establishment, and the other side of that building was the drugstore owned by Albert Williams, and Albert Williams owned the building. So that burned up. The fire continued down the street. After the hotel, there were 4 houses in a row, and those houses just caught fire one after another. Some of the buildings across the street caught fire, but they managed to put them out. Okay, they very early in the fire, about an hour into the blaze, they sent telegrams to Lambertville and Phillipsburg saying, "Whole town on fire, send help." About 20 businesses burned up in the fire. The fire was only going for about an hour when they sent telegrams to Lambertville and Phillipsburg saying, "Whole town on fire, send help." Phillipsburg managed to bungle that message for an hour before they started acting on it. It was, after all, the middle of the night. Lambertville got right on it. In about an hour, they had a pumper there. It came up on a flat car on the railroad, and it was pouring water onto Dr. Deemy's house, which also was made out of stone, so it was fire resistant. But as you know, even a stone house has wooden floors and can be in danger. When the building next door started to collapse, men with long boards pushed the falling walls in onto itself, away from Deemy's house. Within about 2 or 3 hours, the whole thing was pretty much under control. The people who were not trying to soak down the houses, they were salvaging furniture and whatever else from either places that were about to burn up or that they thought would burn up. In the building that now contains the Frenchtown bookshop, 4 men picked up a piano and rushed it out the back door to safety. Later, after the fire was under control, it took 10 men to bring it back. Shows you what adrenaline can do in an emergency. The Hummer furniture store owner, George Hummer, and his wife, they had a 16-month-old son named Charles. Their business was a goner, but their house on 2nd Street was in jeopardy, so they were salvaging furniture out of there. They handed Charles off to a babysitter so they could work unencumbered, salvaging furniture and the like. And when things were under control, they found the babysitter, but she did not have Charles. And Charles was missing for hours. When the sun came up, they found Charles asleep in a ditch, totally unharmed. He had just toddled off into the smoke, and probably the babysitter had some tough questions to answer. Afterward, they tried to figure out what started the fire. Most of the newspapers of the time attributed it to an incendiary, which was an old-fashioned word for a arsonist. However, there's a newspaper called the Hunterdon Independent, and they wrote that they would hate to think that someone would do such a thing deliberately. So they really exerted themselves to come up with other theories. So they came up with these theories. They thought maybe someone had thrown a cigar butt into some dry manure, or maybe Dr. Deemy's horse had stepped on a match, or maybe Dr. Deemy's horse had stepped on a cap from a cap pistol. The Deemys did have 2 sons who were of an age to have cap pistols. My personal pet theory is that one of the Deemy boys was playing with matches and maybe something smoldered and lit up after bedtime. After the fire, there was a lot of talk saying, we have to get a fire engine, we have to get a fire company going. The Vigilant fire company was long gone. The Vigilant pumper was unreliable. But they wanted a real steam pumper, and they had committees, and they figured out what it would cost to get one and how it would be paid for. But the price was pretty high, and after about a month, interest lagged, and Frenchtown would not get a steam pumper and a fire company until 10 years after the fire. And that's the fire company we still have. So that's the story.